Thank you everybody for coming tonight. My name is Tyler Giannini and I co-direct the International Human Rights Clinic here as well as the Human Rights Program. We're one of the sponsors of the screening of this film tonight, when we're going to get right to that pretty quickly. There are other co-sponsors. I want to thank them as well. HLS Lambda and the East Asian Legal Studies, as well as the Harvard Law Student Advocates for Human Rights. We're all co-sponsoring this event tonight. And it's an event of a screening of a film, and the film is called This Kind of Love. And it's a film about Burma, and specifically about Aung Myo Min and his experience. And we're fortunate enough to have Aung Myo Min here today. So he is a dynamic human rights activist and educator, really, from Burma. And it's really been a pleasure of mine to know him through the years, and welcome. We're excited to have a conversation with you later. He's founded two organizations that are actually related, one on human rights. It's called the Human Rights Education Institute of Burma, and it worked for years along the Thai-Burmese border. And then with the changes that are going on inside, took the organization inside of the country, and it's now called Equality Myanmar. There'll be more of that in the film, but it's an honor to have you here, really, so welcome. We're also, for the discussion period, going to be joined by Wei Wei Nu, who is to Myo's left. And she is the director and founder of a group called the Women's Peace Network Arakan. And she is also a leader in the field of human rights right now, and has been working intensely on human rights since being released from prison in 2012. She's a former political prisoner, spent 7 years as a political prisoner, and she's been working on issues related to human rights and peace, and trying to bring these issues to the fore, in particular around the communities which she is a part, but beyond that, she's from the Rohingya community, which is in Arakan state in the western Burma. So it's really an honor to have her here as well. We're going to have discussion after the film. The film goes about 45 minutes, and I think I'm going to let the film speak for itself. Once we get started, it kind of does the work. I don't need to say much about it. But 45 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to discussion, so that we want to really hear from you and have it be a discussion about the film, but also about the issues that are going on in Burma right now. There's an election coming up in early November, and so the issues of human rights are very timely in this political space. And so we want this to be a conversation, not a talk. It's not going to go film and then a talk. It's going to be film and then a conversation. So with that, let's get the film started. I think we should also thank Jeannie Hallisey for putting the film together, because she was the director and a documentary activist in her own right, who's lived in Thailand for 24 years. And it's really her film as much as yours, and we should thank her for that. I gave brief introductions at the beginning. I don't want to go too long with introductions here. I think we should get straight to questions, because hopefully there are some things that the film provoked for all of you. Briefly, again, Wei Wei, who's to my left, is the director and founder of the Women's Peace Network Arakan, and has been working on issues related to the Rohingya. And she's a former political prisoner. But she can speak about many other issues as well as that. And then Myo, I think, I don't have to introduce you again. But this is Myo.
You watched the whole movie, so.
So I thought we would do a round of questions, several questions at a time, not one at a time, so that Wei Wei and Myo can answer a few things at a time, ranging from the film or just questions about Burma or Myanmar.
Thank you so much. This one question is, how do you form the networks that you create? Like, how do you meet people who believe in your cause?
Wei first.
Thank you very much. It was a beautiful film. And one of the things that it got me to think about was from my work doing some social justice activism domestically, I know that one of the big themes that we talked about a lot was intersectionality, and how injustice against anyone is injustice against everyone. We tried to connect issues: racial justice, economic justice, gender justice, and more. And that's sort of what I saw in the film, is somehow there was a connection between discrimination against the LGBT community, religious communities, gender, etc. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that might be unique to Burma or not at all.
Thank you so much for this film, and thank you so much for your example. My question was about the US's place in the story. President Obama visited Myanmar in the past 2 years, and I'm wondering what role you thought the US had to play going forward in many of the issues you address and have experienced and suffered from in your own experience.
Thank you. So we will pick up 3 questions first. The first question: how could I build up the network? Your question remind me last 15 years, because when I was decided to work on the human rights education, I was the only one founding member of my organization. I did not have any contact and any support, but I started because I believe in that human rights education is a must for our country. But I'm based in Thailand. I live in exile. So we started with the people, Burmese people in Thailand first, because at that time it's so difficult to have a better communications and very dangerous or risk for many of the people operating inside the country to contact with us. So start with the refugees who are also, facing social discrimination in Thailand without the basic fundamental human rights, living in the refugee camp. And then I reach out more people from migrant workers from Burma. We have millions of migrant workers. I started human rights education. They told me so many forms of labor exploitation, so many forms of trafficking cases, and so many forms of labor right abuses. So I start with them. But later I realized that we need to work and reach out to people inside the country, because I strongly believe the strength is inside the country. We need the international pressure, but we need the movement of human rights in the country. Without that, it's very difficult to get the momentum. So I try to identify who is interested in human rights education first. It was really, a funny story, like, bringing people from Burma illegally across in the country, doing the human rights education for 1 month, and send them back. So we are doing this kind of, human smuggling for a good week. Because this is the only way we can do that. I couldn't go back. We cannot operate any human rights education inside the country. Only way is to bring the people interested in human rights, come across to Thailand and learn it from us, and go back and doing the human rights education. That time, human rights is a criminal. Distribution of Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a crime, and it can make you 10 years imprisonment. So we are using human rights training to expand the understanding. And the interesting way is we don't use human rights, but we talk about human rights. So we use human dignity, diversity, identity, but we are talking about human rights, because if you talk about human rights openly, this is really dangerous, which for our people. So, and then we, extend it. We start working on the concept of human rights, and people get more aware of that, and then we move more on the network building. So when I was able to go back 3 years, in year 2013, when I was invited, we already have a network inside the country. We train more than 300 people to become trainers, committed and strongly working on human rights education. But they were like an underground movement, talking about human rights, reaching out the people, raising awareness, underground style. But when I was able to go back, it's become more above ground, more obvious, more systematic network. So we use that people that we train and bring more solidarity, more capacity building, and reach out to more network, like Women Network. That's where we met, And also we help to have a stronger LGBT network, child right network. So we are more not about the education, but also action plan, how we can claim the policy change, attitude change in the community. That's why we are expanding the work. Start from one person, but spread and multiply many people who are also share common vision and also objectives and work together. So now, now we have 2 offices in Yangon and Mandalay inside the country. We have 42 full-time staff working together with me, and also we have 150 volunteer trainers who have we trained since last 15 years. This year is the 15th anniversary of my organization, and we set up the Human Rights Educators Network that composed more than 150 trainers in every division and state of the country. And we are bringing more network with the other people who don't have that kind of human rights education program with us. And for example of the justice issue and how can we say? Yeah, in this video, I said that, I see people as a human beings. I don't have any, distinguish between religion, ethnic, and sexual orientation. But when you talk about social justice, that issue come up. We have a very, hierarchy system of gender. Men always is a superior, and also women are, subordinate. And also we have military and people. We have, wealthy people and also the poor people. So this is a cross-cutting issue, I would say that. And so, but human rights is a good entry point to discuss about universality, non-discrimination. So we start this first very fundamental principle of human rights, which respect universality and non-discrimination. And people start talking about their life. For women group, they talk about gender discrimination, sometimes ethnic discrimination. So we let them talk because this is a good way they start speaking out, reveal it, and also reflect it. But never forget to bring in the other issues that they don't usually see obviously. Women can talk it, but sometimes they forget lesbian women in their movement, transgender women in their activities. So this is happening. And sometimes we talk about youth, but how about the LGBT youth? How about the disabled people youth? So we bring in this kind of, issue that general people don't sometimes forget to identify. So this is the way we're bringing the different issue together, and people can sympathize first. Oh, yes, that's right. They share the same situation like us, and we should work together. And the empathy and the action together. So this is the way we are building, all the minority vulnerable groups issues together. So for LGBT issue is that stays very sensitive, stay very taboo. Nobody wants to talk about it. But we brought them into the human rights situation, human rights discussion, women discussion, and some people dare to ask the question. The problem of Burma is not, people don't understand because they don't have the right to know the information. They don't know how to ask and where to ask. Once they got the right information, they are easy to understand and related to the situation. So the role of human rights educator is not only talking about the general situation of human rights, but also bringing some of their vulnerable groups, marginalized group of the society, so they can see the problems as other people. Regarding your question, U.S. policy, I was here for 3 weeks. Both of us have a meeting with the U.S. State Department, and we had a meeting with your President Obama, very very small private meeting. We raised the issue of we appreciate the U.S. policy that always outspoken about the human rights violation of the military in our country. Among the other countries, U.S. is most outspoken and more critical on the situation. And we really appreciate that kind of foreign policy. And we strongly believe that because of the growth of the civil rights movement in the country and international attention, particularly from the US, that make the military to think about the changes. That's why, we see that both sides work together. But we have a concern about the recent US government policy towards Burma. President Obama thinks that Burma is the best successful story of his administration, because they lifted the U.S. sanction on Burma and military make it some kind of changes. So President Obama administration said their policy worked. That's why there was a change. But we would say that this country is better than before the previous government, because the previous government was the really worst scenario. It's like a winter time here. It's like a minus 20 degree. Now we are 0 degree, but it's not plus degree yet. So you see that it's like that kind of comparison. So it's better, but it's not the way we want then our country to be seen like that. We want the country to do that. But U.S. government is more on the business interest now, more on the investment interest now. Human rights agenda is a bit downgraded, because they want to have more investment and economic, compete with China and other countries who are already rushed into the country. So then everything will be fine. Sometimes they forget or they try not to see the real situation of the people. In this video, you can see that student demonstrators are brutally beaten up. Many of them waiting for the trial. Many of the land rights activists, including farmers, are sentenced to long-term imprisonment for reclaiming their land. And civil war, that's been more than 6 decades, is still going on in Kachin state and Shan state. And military claim that they are in the peace process is going on. But peace process is going on only on the table. But under the table, military tanks, military planes are ready to attack. So the government should not only see on the table scenes. It should see what is really happening. We will say that we are encouraged to see some of the small changes, but it's stay early to lift all the sanction and all the conditions, because that will let the government to gain more legitimacy, to gain more international recognition, to gain more international support. So we want the U.S. government to have a balance, constructive and also concern on human rights situation. This is what we like to see. You want to add anything?
Wait a minute. You want to add some on either the networks and the education work dimensions that you do with your work, or the policy work of the U.S.?
Maybe. Thank you for giving me a chance, and thanks for joining with you, CMU and Tyler. Actually, I'm here to do advocacy at the U.S. State Department and U.S. government, and also to talk, to do some advocacy at the UNGA, UN ANGA. So, and I had a chance to see President Obama and to talk with him in June. And then, as CMU mentioned, President Obama is saying, going around the world and saying that U.S. policy towards Burma is a success story. And when I met with him, I say, Mr. President, U.S. policy towards Burma is not a success story. While Holocaust Museum describing the situations in Rakhine State as a process of genocide, and our experience of 4 years experience of deteriorating all human rights sectors in the country after the transitions, it is witnessing that it is not a success story. So this is the time to consider to revise U.S. policy. And I asked him to extend some targeted sanction. And he was saying me that we also understood the current policy, U.S. policy towards Burma, it's more on the business. Human rights agenda is behind. So we were trying to convince the government, but the president, he was saying me that we can hope for the election. We have hope. And I said, I agree with you. It is very important to elections is very important, but it is also more important to make sure elections is free and fair and all inclusive. And after 1 month, 2 months later now, what we've seen in the country, about 1 million people, my community, is facing disenfranchisement and rejections of political candidates in the elections and total exclusions from the election. And we have seen 25 percent of seat military reserve seat in the elections, and the Aung San Suu Kyi still cannot be a president according to the law. So, and then the U.S. government is applauding the Burmese transition and election. They say it's okay, just continue. So in this time, what I'm saying is, this is very important step for our country. Since the beginning, if we cannot protect, if we cannot stick on the human rights value, it will be very difficult. And country like United States has moral responsibility to protect rights of the people and to protect life of the people, to its constitutions and its people.
Okay. I'm going to probably join with a question of my own on the next round because I want to ask a few questions myself, but let's get a few other questions out there. And they can also follow up on any of the things that's been said as well. Michael.
So, it was really interesting seeing the way that the movement really relied on human rights principles. And one of the things that people often talk about is how human rights principles are sometimes not always as respected outside the West. They sometimes as Western ideas, not familiar to people from the community. So, to what extent was that a challenge in terms of doing human rights education, kind of Western, distance, and then how did you make the principles seem more at home with the people who you were working with?
Minnie.
I do want to just thank you so much for sharing your story and your work with us in this community. It really is just so inspirational. My question is sort of a hard one, is how do you engage with the institutions of the government, for example, with the police and their practices, or with political parties and eventually with the government?
Okay.
Can I?
Sure.
Actually, that was my question too. The one I wanted to ask immediately.
Sorry.
That's great. I'll just maybe take a slightly different angle on it. Is that if those institutions are the ones who are involved in profound problems such as being accused of genocide and ethnic cleansing in particular communities, how does the education piece actually overlap? Are you bringing that to these institutions in any way that's meaningful yet? So it's both a general question about institutions, but also how is the networking and educational piece part of this?
Okay, the first one is, what is the first question? I forgot.
The first question was about Western.
Okay, Western
values,
idea.
And then how are you engaging?
Actually,
with
this is what we hear from our state governments, radio, media, and television. Government always say that human rights is a Western idea, particularly American culture. So this is it's too much propaganda like that before, so some people sometimes believe in that. So to encounter this kind of, misinterpretation of human rights, we used our old culture and religious teaching. what is deeply rooted in our own culture. Because human rights is, culture of human rights is mutual respect, understanding and recognize the diversity, and live in peace without violence. So this is the culture of human rights we always talking about. It's already in our culture, and I'm sure it's already in every religious teaching. No religious encouraged to use violence. For Buddha, it's loving kindness. It's a kind of very good way of to love and to be loved, to respect and to be respected. So this is the way we are teaching about. We use different discussion about using how can we say that activities, songs. It's like a kind of student center activities, but it's really reached their heart. They realize that they reflected by themselves without us teaching that this is a human right. They reflected by themselves by discussion. They reflected by themselves by asking questions each other. So we use the culture forms and also religious teaching, which is very much similar with the culture of human rights. So we use the different we use our own culture and religious context. And sometimes we say that for funny thing, like regarding LGBT issue, we did not have any law or any practice in our own culture. But Article 377, which is also known as Burmese version of sodomy law, was brought by British. So this is the way we say that we have originally we have a culture of human rights in our culture, and also the way the elder teach to the younger people is much in line with the human rights principle. So this is the way we encounter the human rights is a Western idea, or human rights is American culture. This is the way we are always encounter with. And second one, peace. Like we mentioned about peace. Peace is very much related, to human rights. So we discuss about the peace education in the community level. But when community understand or could identify the issues that is happening in the country, we let them to discuss about how can you do the action, like a step from the individual change, like a behavior change and attitude change, like violence against children, violence against women, domestic violence cases. How could you do it by yourself? And later, our training never end up one training. We follow up, and how can you take action as a community level? So sometimes they start talking about this issue to the other people. They have a small group working on setting up the theater group, or they have a international day against violence against women. They take an action like that. So they are ready to take up some steps that they never did before. But our role is to engage them with our engagement with the emerging government structures. Like, we did not have any parliament before in the previous government. Now we have parliament. We don't like it. We don't say the parliament has very good places yet, but at least this is the entry point. We can go and talk to the parliamentarians who are sympathetic, who understand us, who is willing to talk to us. For me, it's a big, encouragement. 2 MPs in the current parliaments are our trainers. They came to Thailand, they attended our training, and they were sentenced to 65 years imprisonment because they joined our training. But later they released, and during the by-election, they both are elected. So we have some people like that who are, sympathetic to us, and also willing to work on human rights issues. We try to start with the individual engagement with the MPs individually, and then link with other people. And also when we have a group of people, delegation who wants to talk about the interfaith law, who wants to talk about the association law, we have a more interactive dialogue with the parliament. I would say the parliaments are the most open space for us, because we can see that sympathy and understanding and support and solidarity. Another way I'm engaging with is I'm working on the international report, like for UPR report, CEDAW reports, and CRC report. So they know me that I'm working on that. So sometimes they invited me and gave us my suggestion how to write a government report. And sometimes they ask me to give a recommendation for this report. So for this case, we engage with the concerned ministers. So this is we are engaging. The police is difficult, but the EU has a police training for the policemen or at the police academy. So we are never got invited for do that, but we give a recommendation, our guidelines, and our suggestion to the EU who are running this training program at the police officers. And so the most difficult channel would be military, of course, and police. And now another emerging institution would be religion leader. Yeah?
I think it's emerged already. That's a problem. It's not emerging. You want to talk about this?
Yes, when it's come to the human rights educations, of course, majority of the people in the country think human rights is Western, mostly religious leaders and from the government institutions. So they should have their own way of human rights. So universal human rights should not be applied in the Burmese context. So they should have Burmese way of human rights. That's what they believe, majority of the people. And government has its own agenda for human rights. So the military government, all of the curriculums, even in the international human rights law and at the university, when you go to the human rights chapters, of course you can find these universal declarations of human rights, but the example, the case studies that they give is kind of human rights is not suitable with our country. So then when you read deeply, you will get that sense. So we should have our own way of human rights. So that's the government institutions, educations, and all other military, police, they all were well trained with the mentality of military's human rights perspective. So when the government institutions think that people who ask for the human rights or who are human rights advocates or human rights activists, they see as a threat. So they have always mostly, not always, but mostly, there are some individuals in the government, they are willing to engage with the human rights activists and promote human rights, but institutions as a whole, they see this as a threat for them. In fact, it might be a threat for their power, but not the freedom and development of the country. That's one part. But then when we actually see this, the opening of the country, and when we engage with the human rights, even in the general public, it is still very difficult while the education system was so corrupted, and while the country was ruled with the military dictatorship for 60 years. So it is still very challenging to educate people about the human rights, so that it is very easy for the government to propaganda against the diversity or religious minorities or the racial minorities, and it is easier for the government to manipulate the mindset of the people by seeding hatred and propaganda, so that we are seeing this as a result of this nationalist movement and nationalism in the country.
And just as a background, that the reference to the religious organization is the Buddhist organization. There's one strain of the Buddhist organization, the monks in the country, who are taking very strong stands that are nationalist. So if you're not a Burma person, that's the reference. It's actually not a government institution, it's a religious order, and one, they're leading a lot of the discriminatory practices against the Rohingya. That was
But we
that
strongly
reference.
believe that there's a connection,
Yes.
this group is, supported by at least some of the leaders of the military, because they have a very big, financial, resources.
Mhm.
And also, they expanding so rapidly without taking any action by the government for spreading hate speech, violence. So that impunity culture is showing that this group is one way or another related with the government.
Thank you so very much for your talk. I have a question, actually, for Weiwei especially about, and both of you really can pivot, specifically with reference to your work on Rohingya communities. And I guess I would ask about, you mentioned the Holocaust Museum report and reports that are published internationally in your advocacy internationally. And I guess I would ask about whether you use international materials domestically, and if so, how? Or do you really find that international advocacy materials are more useful on the international stage, and are you doing very distinct work domestically? What is the relationship, I guess, between those kinds of materials? Is what I would ask.
As we mentioned, human rights knowledge inside the country, even among the government institutions, even among the minister, they not really understand what human rights really is. So it is also a need of to educate human rights mechanism to the to this. I mean, even in the high level officials of the government and institutions. So in these situations, actually, it is a bit difficult to approach to the government with the human rights mechanism, because actually Burma is a country which ratified a lot of the international human rights mechanism, but they don't really respect and apply them. So it is a bit hard, but we are now trying to engage with the domestically by using any channels we have. For example, by using CEDAW or CEDAW report from the women's rights approach or from the CRC approach. And now currently, as Samuel mentioned, we have submitted the UPR. So hopefully in the future we are trying to have more engagement by using this international mechanism domestically. But of course, the international mechanisms are more easy to do advocacy and lobby in outside of the country, because they are already aware of it and they understand it well.
There are several groups working on human rights documentation, producing a report in the country, because these information should always come from the grassroots, right? So we have a good, outreach and writing this report. But different between other issue and Rohingya issue. In other issue, many groups can make public, press conference, and also making a press statement. But Rohingya issue very sensitive. It's not only discrimination against the Rohingya people. There's a threat to the people who speak on behalf of Rohingya people. So that's why many organizations collect the information, but they don't public it inside the country. This case is for Rohingya issue. So that's why we always quoted other international organizations on that issue, because the threat is very severe. But we have very lucky, very brave, people working on Rohingya issue inside the country. But she always faced this, intimidation, sometimes death threat. So we have to see sometimes how it works and what is the cause and also benefit and cost and risks of the issue. That's why other issues, there's a lot of reports like of human rights offenders, land rights, because that it was not so sensitive like Rohingya issue inside the country.
Well, we now got three.
Yeah.
Moni and Sharon.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I had a question with regards to, there was a clip in the video of a man being very severely beaten because of his religion. And I wonder, how do you engage with that type of irrational anger on a human level? Like if you were to meet the men that were beating that other man in a room, what would you say to them? As an activist, as another person.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing as well. I have a question that's relevant to religion as well. So I think you all mentioned religious institutions as a new actor in the human rights movement in Myanmar, like a potential new actor. So you also mentioned that like we can use religious teachings as an alternative to the Western human rights ideals in order to convince people domestically. But you also mentioned that a lot of religious institutions are actually backed by the military. So would you foresee the challenges of involving religious institutions in human rights movement, and how can they be involved in? And also, one more short question is I know that there are a lot of filming restrictions in Myanmar concerning
Film
concerning documentary filming, movie filming. So I was just wondering if you encountered any challenges when you did
Okay.
the documentary.
Yeah, hi. Thank you both. I just wanted to ask about for you both to dig a little deeper about explaining the root causes, or how you see the root causes of especially the ethnic violence and bigotry. And I know you both mentioned sort of government manipulation and propaganda and the role of religion and various other factors, but I'm wondering if you could maybe expound a little bit more on what you see as some of the driving causes and to maybe where some of the strategic entry points are for changing that dynamic, that norm in the public consciousness.
And can I just add on to this? I think for me, these three questions bring together that we're talking about human rights, but in many ways you're talking about a cultural transformation within the country and the institutions, not a legal transformation. This is not how are you doing that cultural change, which I think brings us back to how do you get to the military institutions on a cultural level, meaning changing their normative framework, changing the way they're thinking, and getting to healing in the same way that you're getting with individuals who you do have access to. Because that seems what you both really want to get to, is to change the attitudes, the hearts and minds. How do you do that with these institutions that are doing such horrific things still?
Very hard questions. Okay, for the first question about the irrational killing of the thing, it's very sad for me to see this kind of thing happen in the area that all different religions live together without any problems. We live in harmony, no problems. But it started from the Arakan state, accusation of the Rohingya people, and spread to there, and it became an anti-Muslim movement by the religious leader. That time, nobody can do anything. So violent. Sometimes some people even want to intervene it, but the violence was so tense, nobody can touch. It's happened like that. So it's very difficult for us to do it in right way. But what we do is relief work. We provide the relief work, and we do the relief assistance to both sides. We're not citing one group and citing other group. So we provide this is the issue of humanitarian assistance, issue of the humanitarian needs, regardless of religion. So we try to make it fair to both sides. And then we bring some of the religious leaders who are not that gang yet, not that station yet. So some religious leaders follow us, Muslim leaders follow us, Christian leaders follow us. We kind of show the interfaith approach to the religion. So every religious leader can talk about what is the real essence of the religion and how can we relate each other and set some small example of the interfaith movement. But so far, it's only between the leaders to leaders, not to the peoples to people yet, the interfaith one. And second one, this is the big issue. It cannot be done by two of us alone, or only one organization. So we have a kind of, coalition work together. One group who are very good in information and technology monitor the hate speech that is commonly, seen on the Facebook, Twitter. Twitter is not popular, but Facebook is crazy. So we have a kind of, hate speech control by the IT group and monitoring who did what and report that. So at least that could be a kind of, to slow down the hate speech using social media. And interfaith leaders doing the interfaith meeting with the different group, different religions. At the same time, we have a good group of writers, poets, and artists who are launching, they call flower speech. It's against the hate speech. Flower means peace, beauty, love. So there's a flower speech campaign by the artist. They have a mobile, talk in the area where different religions are living together, talking about how to preserve peace instead of hate, how to, understand diversity by the famous poets, famous writers, famous artists. So it gained a lot of support. And my team, the youth group, they are trained for child rights issue, but taking the peace issue, and they adapt their script to have a peace, peace theater, peace talk, by themselves, and they're dealing with the peer educators, peer children in the community. So this is the kind of holistic approach by the different organizations. It's still difficult because the other side of the camp, they got a lot of support by the government. We don't have that money. They have very orchestrated, well organized. We are just, volunteer basis. So, but at least there's a movement to encounter this kind of hate campaign with flower campaign. So this is what we are doing. So this also answers some of the questions about how we can do this. But your question, how could we change the institution? It's very difficult because our constitution allows the militarization. We mentioned about 75% of the parliament is preoccupied by the military. You cannot change any law if you don't get any support from the military in the parliament. And the criteria of the president also did not allow their person like Aung San Suu Kyi to become the president. So this is the constitution. This is another institution that never support us to make a change for the law, which is in line with the international standard. But we have a call for amendment of the constitution. This is not. It gained some kind of vote, but it did not win the majority. But you can see that this is a momentum we want to change it. So this election is a kind of, it's not, if this election in November will not bring the solution for all answers, all questions. But at least there's more people in the parliament and more people, possible way of some people from the military would, call for the change. This is the way, one step for making the changes. So this is, we are trying. Very difficult because country was militarized for generations, and sometimes military people don't want to hand over the power because they think it will be the end of their life. So this kind of thing happened, but never estimate the power of young people and we are committed people. We will not see the success in our life, but we are working for the new generation. Some people say that, teacher, they call me teacher. Teacher, don't give human rights education to the leaders because they will die anyway. Do more emphasis for the young people. So when they become a leader, we are investing in young people to have a more human rights friendly people. And I don't know if it's true or it is possible or not. The question like the documentary films, well, we did not have to pass through the censorship. no censorship vote for this trip, and we showed it at the third Human Dignity and Human Rights Film Festival in the country. So it was very, very grand. It is at the downtown. It is it's also chaired by Aung San Suu Kyi. So it showed two times in the films. The first time is full, second time full, but I see that second time some people left when the Rohingya sings what show. It showed the protest. They don't like the part. They like me, but they don't like the Rohingya. So this kind of protest. And that time at the public place, because so many demands, so we have a special show in other private place. 3 people came and challenged me about that Rohingya issue, and one against the LGBT issue. He said he respected me, but why I'm taking LGBT issue? It's too much. We don't have human rights. We don't have women rights. Why LGBT? So, well, I said the LGBT are also human beings. So we cannot have class B, class C, class A. We cannot classify the people like that. So my question. Second part is why you are protecting the Rohingya people who are enemy of the state and enemy of the religion. My simple answer: they are also human beings too. I cannot accept any forms of violations by whom, by who. So this is my question. So, but in here, quite accepted. I did. This is the 18th screening in my tour of 3 weeks. So everyone showed it was well accepted. Some people asked me very personal questions, about my love, my life. Some people have a question like I cannot answer. How we can change the institution of the government.
And I should say that I've worked on Burma for 20 years, so maybe I also really want that institution to change finally, which is why I keep asking, where's the answer?
Yes, so big questions. I think when it's come to the first questions, I think the violence and incitement and also making people anger all are very arranged, planned, and facilitated and encouraged. So after the violence and after this kind of killing, and we've seen people who are beaten or people who are killed, they didn't get any justice. In fact, they themselves were put in prison. For example, after the violence in 2012 in Rakhine State, about 50,000 Rohingya are forced to displace and put in the IDP camps and living like squalid camps and like living as open prison. And at least according to the government news, at least 200 the Rohingya were killed, but only a few and about 5,000 Rakhine Buddhists were displaced. But when you see the government actions respond the violence, about 1,000 Rohingya were put in jail for up to 7-year sentence, but only about 50 Rakhine were arrested, and they were released after a few months. And also in Meitila, where 33 young students, Muslim students plus people were killed. There were only few Buddhists were taken actions, but in fact, many Muslims were arrested and sentenced because a Buddhist monk was killed. So it is like unfair treatment, and also justice system and and the government policy for this violence. So I think it is, I believe that everyone should get justice for any kind of human rights violations or injustice. So when it's not only in the recent violence, but also throughout the Burmese history under the military dictatorship, whoever faced human rights violations or suffered in this wrong systems, political system, they should have recognitions of their injustice, and they should have justice. And at some point, the government or the society need to recognize it or find a way for their justice, and in any way, maybe by any kinds of healing or accountability. And but still we haven't seen any kind of actions or discussions on that after the 4 years or 5 years transitions. But some people among the civil society actors, they are trying in their own way to help each other. So we've seen that little attempt from the civil society actors, former political prisoners groups, and in their individual way. When it comes to second questions, role of religious institutions in Burma, it's very, very important. After the violence anti-Muslim violence in 2012, we have seen two types of religious institutions. One is the religion, three. The first group is if we talk about the Buddhist monks, we have about 500,000 Buddhist monks in the country, and these 500,000 Buddhist monks are culturally, historically, they are very close with the society, and they have a very strong attachment with the society. But their role have been from the government side, they were never majority of them were never encouraged or recognized or empowered by the state, but they still have very close relationship and then attached to the people, power, influence among the society. So in this about 500,000 monks, one group, they are really they have support and encouragement from the government, and they implement all the government agenda. So part of this group become members of this Mabata Race and Religion Protections Association, the Buddhist nationalist movement groups, and some of the second group of the Buddhist monk, they say we don't interested anything. We just interested for the a religious matter. But the other group, there are some individuals, monks and prominent monks, good monks. They want to promote. They are interested in politics, and they are interested in human lives, and they want to promote this human rights and democracy in the country, and they respect others. So those kind of monks, actually, this type, they were always targeted by the government and take actions against them in many ways. So their voice is not heard, and they cannot influence the society because of the government, and the activists and people, prominent people who came up with their by the standing of this racism and racist movement, and they took actions. For example, in one of the prominent other from the NLD party, he said that he gave a speech that what the Mabata, this Buddhist nationalist movement, is doing is not according to the Buddhist principle. It is defaming Buddhism itself, and it is destroying Buddhism itself. And he was put in jail and sentenced to 20 years with the Religious Defamation Act. So it is very difficult, even though some religious institutions, they can really influence and promote human rights with their existing authority and influence. But since the authorities and government don't encourage them, it is still quite difficult. So, yeah. So when it's come to the ethnic violence and the discriminations, I think it is also because of the, for example, in Rohingya case, firstly, it's because of the government discriminatory policies and mindset towards these people. Secondly, after that, by enacting new citizenship law, they degrade citizenship status of the Rohingya, and then they never issued restore this citizenship card to the Rohingya with other people. So the laws, the discriminatory laws, and by degrading citizenship status and also introducing discriminatory practices in the state, so among the community, Buddhists and Muslims in Rakhine State. So when the community become unequal, then it is easier to instigate violence and to create conflict. At the same time, when you have no rule of law, and then it is more easier to continue and to sustain the conflict. And this is continuing and sustaining because of this impunity, getting impunity by this the government institutions and this religious extremist movement. So since they are getting impunity to do whatever they want, to violate, to abuses other religions or individual, so it is like continuing. So I think the other root causes will be poverty and education, lack of educations and education system itself. So we need to solve these root causes to move forward the transitions, as well as I believe Siamil said, I agree with his student. We need to invest young people, because I also believe that not because the old guys will die, but because I think the majority, in our country, it's the half of the population is young people, and young people, youth are very easy to, if someone pursue to pursue them and to use them in that way. And also, they can play in the future, they can play in major roles. So we don't want them to be in the bad side, we want them to in our side, in good side. So I also actually invest, we also trying to, invest in youth, and we believe that if we can change the mentality of a generation, our generation, it will be easier for us to move forward when they took as a leading role in the country. So so we are also now doing a campaign called My Friend Campaign. So we have also trainings on different, mainly human rights and civic education. So we also teach the human rights, and religion play a very important role. One of the girls in the last term, she said, I accept human rights. She is in fact a Muslim girl, and she said, I agree with the Universal Human Rights Declaration, but it is difficult for me to accept the LGBTs. Of course, she is discriminated. She herself is discriminated in the country, she's not respected by the community or by the government, but she said she cannot accept LGBT. Oh my God, I don't know how to answer. Then at the end of the program, we convinced her that by understanding that all human beings are by nature free and equal, when we born, we are equal. We are born as a human being. So by this way, we try to change the mentality of the generations. Hopefully, we need all of your concern and effort and support for our country. Maybe in the future we can.
One more round of questions, okay? Last one, and then if you want to ask some questions, you can come up and talk with Wei and with, I think they'll give you some more time. All right, 3 hands, okay? And then Matt.
Thank you both for excellent presentation, and also thank you for organizing this event. So my question related to China. So have you ever been to China, and have you ever seen any the change in the role of the Chinese government in the democratic transition period over the past 4 years?
Okay, China relations.
My question was, you spoke a little bit about education, and so in thinking about human rights youth education, you talked about encountering different preconceived notions that they already have. I was wondering how often you encounter religious discrimination already in a youth population, and then how you go about breaking that down. And I was also curious about when you're thinking of accountability, what you're actually thinking about.
Thank you very much for a wonderful evening. I thought the film was really excellent, and I think these individual stories, and clearly you've both got incredibly important stories to tell, are a wonderful way of conveying the message. I think when you individualise these things, it becomes all the more powerful. So thank you very much indeed. My question really is a one of strategy, if you like. Clearly, you've mentioned a number of occasions that you've got limited resources in terms of the number of people within the movement, in terms of access to politicians, in terms of financing, one would assume, and in terms of time. And so I'm wondering whether you see your role as a one of an educative process, and I think that's how you see it. And if you do, given the finite resources, time, etc., how do you focus upon, and why do you focus upon specific human rights in terms of the issues that you want to raise? Because, of course, across the canvas of human rights, it's a very broad panoply. And I think that's it. That's the question.
Can I add, I'd ask you both maybe if you'd be willing to say something about, on a personal note, about how you sustain yourselves. Just because there are people in the room who are at the beginning of their careers, and if you're doing this year after year, how do you do that? And there's so much inner strength that you bring, so how do you get there?
So I answer first and you think about. Okay, for the first question, the China relation. The Chinese government has a very, very good relation with the military government in terms of investment and also the business. Particularly, there's a kind of, movement by the civil society and civilians, particularly when the Chinese government want to touch our Irrawaddy River. Irrawaddy River is, we call Mother River. Is Chinese government want to have the dam. So that was a kind of civil movement to protect the Salween. So some people see more, influence of Chinese government and support to the government, previous government. And our president promised that the dam will not be continued until during his time. He didn't say that forever, so he can do. So we we should re-elect him to save our mother. So, but that's a concern by many citizens of Burma. And Chinese government tried to play the game now. They invited Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah.
And they have a good discussion about, but we don't know what is their close discussion issue, but at least they try to balance the relation with the military and Aung San Suu Kyi. And also the Chinese embassy is the most immediate and biggest supporter of relief to our flood. So I think they try to gain more, more good credit, because people have that kind of, feeling against the Chinese government. So other government support later, but Chinese government and Chinese ambassador went to the flooded area and provide the relief humanitarian assistance. So they try to change. They start listening to the voices of people, but I don't know whether they would change their policy or not. At least they play with both sides now. Okay. Second one is I forget the second one. I did not write it down.
It's about youth education. How often you encounter religious discrimination or preconceived?
Okay. Well, when we talk about UDHR, freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, freedom of religion is the big issue. And we have a long history of religious persecution against Christian in Chin State and Kachin State. It is well documented. But that issue is still going on, but we have more against the Muslim people. So we have to talk about it. So when we always say in our training session, we always say that, okay, freedom of religion, rights and responsibilities. You have the right to religion, but you don't have the right to attack or give in a hate speech against the other religion. So this kind of rights and responsibility approach sometimes works, because they see that, because we also quoted the Buddhist teaching. Buddhists teach, don't destroy other people, other religion, other ones. So we combine that kind of approach to have a thing. But the thing is, the military is not, I would say that it's diverse, armed groups with different religious leader, religious group and religious ethnic people. But they try to see anyone against them as an enemy. This is the principle. So we always say that this is not a Buddhist people against other people. Sometimes Buddhist people are also violated their right because government see them as an enemy. So we do it that way, but we always highlight the issue of religious discrimination against Christian in Chin State and Kachin State, because many of the religious buildings are not allowed to build, and some of the churches and religious places are destroyed, and some of the religious people are arrested for the practice of religion. So we always highlight like this. So we never forget about that. That one is, can you give me it?
It's about your strategy.
Okay, my strategy. Okay.
Specific rights you.
Right. So, well, for me, human rights education is an entry point to open up the eyes and ears and brain of the people. But it should be ended with action plan. So we have a different layer of strategies. One is attitude and behavior change, that they can do it by themselves in a small community. But we always help them to build up the network. Like this area, there's a group of people working on child rights. And we have a nationwide network of bringing the people working on similar issues into the one network that can engage with the policy level. So as for me, I get involved in many other network building activities and related with the ASEAN and the international. So my role is whenever we have a national level conference or the forum, we always try to bring the people that we work in the community to have the space at the national level. So we have a different level of workshop that people can go and talk, and then they will come up with their their recommendations that they would like to make to the government. We compile it all together. We have a statement of the civil society nationwide that we deliver to the government. So this is very from bottom-up approach. We start from the bottom and then train them to become our national actors, and we collect it together, work together when we engage with the government. So this kind of statement become an open letter to the government. And also, our recommendation to the parliamentarian, our recommendation to the ministers. So this is all within that. Also, we also link with the ASEAN, because ASEAN is 10 countries. We have a very big civil society movement within ASEAN team. So whenever we have an ASEAN conference, we make sure that our recommendation came up from our national level is well reflected in the ASEAN statement, ASEAN movement. This is the way we are doing. But at the same time, for the timing, now we are focused on election. Election is our message is free, fair, independent elections, and we need the right person in the right parliament. So this is the very important time for us to check the candidates, how much they are aware of the situation of human rights, women rights, religious thing. So if they know that, they will be a right person to be in the parliament. So we make a kind of candidate campaign, candidate gathering, meeting with the candidates about our situation, our recommendation. So they already oriented when they are elected. And the issue, Burma is so difficult to pick up which issue go first. It's like a U.S. department store advertisement. You name it, we have it. So we have everything, but we also see the urgent action. Like for example, religious issue is very urgent action. The unconflict issue is a very urgent action. So we work on that. But at the same time, we never forget the law reforms, because many laws make the situation worse. And we also have a kind of impunity issue. So having an impunity, having a perpetrator without arrest, encourage the people to commit more. So we have a long-time plan, but also we are dealing with the urgent and important issue at the same time. Sometimes it's difficult because we have very small human resources. Everyone is busy. Everyone has their own programs. Working on the national level without any, sustainable things is big. But good thing is we have a very strong network, very committed people. We understand each other. So this is the way that we are working strategically. And your question, I always look back what I have done. What are the small changes taken by the people I reach out? So for this stage, for this movie, what I'm proud is the youth people, young people who I trained them as a dancer before, at the beginning. They come to me because they want to dance on the stage. But now they are aware of child rights. They are working as an organization. They write their own report, and they will join me next month in Geneva as a young advocate, meeting with a diplomat, talking about the children issue that document and prepare by themselves. So looking back, somebody is following your steps. This is the way we can be proud of that. And also like her, we have very new, not young, but new for us. Young and new, right? Okay, she was happy now. So seeing that, having a new, multiplying the people like me, and their inspiration they give it to me, keep me strong. And it's like in the video, I always have hope for change. Without hope, people cannot survive. So be hopeful for the better change, and be happy.
Yes, about the accountability. So if I say, as a in my personal experience. I was in prison for 17 years plus fine equal to 2 years, so 19 years when I was 18 years old. So as a teenager, without doing anything, put in the prison, it was really harmful and very difficult to accept the reality of what I was facing. But then I realized this is injustice. And of course I was released after 7 years. I was happy for my release, and I even thankful to them. Because of this imprisonment, I could able to learn a lot inside the jail. I understand everything very clearly, white and black. So then I continue by reminding that injustice. I can continue my good work today. So for me personally, it doesn't mean that I'm really thankful to them. The feeling that I had to suffer, the condition that I have to overcome and the life that we have to sacrifice, the family is economic life, and my education I had to delay for 7 years. These personal lives and the harmful, the damage. When I say that, the heart that you had in your heart, it's very difficult still to overcome. So I think that I have right to seek for my justice, for my suffering, for my injustice. So I should definitely have that, and the other people also should have that, with the voluntarily, whatever way they want. There should be a channel or platform or a way for them to to seek for the justice. That I personally think it can be. We have to look back. We have to turn the chapter of transitional justice. So it can be several ways. But what I mean is, we should have a way. But in the meantime, when we do advocacy and when we approach government to stop human rights violations or to promote human rights in the country, what we are saying is accountability for current violations, to stop impunity of the state actors and individuals, so that we can stop a lot of the conflicts and we can reduce many human rights violations. That's what we are seeking in the meantime, and advocating to end impunity for any kind of human rights violations. So how I survive? Yeah, actually, for me, my struggle is very being a human rights activist or advocate, peace builder, whatever you say. Different people name differently, but for me, I believe in human freedom and peace, and I cannot stand on injustice since I have my own experience of injustice. So my struggle is very personal. So I feel when I was in the prison, when I see and realize all the understood the country's political system era, economic system eras, and since I find there are many people, many young women like me, 20, 18, 17, 25, majority of the women prisoners are young, under 30. So majority of them has no goal, and they don't know what the future is. That's because of the political system era. And when I realized this era. I feel that I have responsibility to give them to understood people, to enable them, young people like me. I mean, when I was 7 years ago, I'm not young anymore, right? Okay, 10 years ago. So I had a dream that I want them to know their dream. I want them to have future, hope for the future. So I took that as my responsibility. And also when I came out of the prison, my community faced tremendous human rights violations or conditions with the name of democracy, losing all the rights, even as not treated as human beings. So, but I'm privileged to grow in the city, second capital of the Burma. So I can laugh, I can study, I can enjoy my life. But my community, back in the Arakan state, they have no life. So when you became a human being, in the other side of the world, you are enjoying all your privileges, but other human beings on the other side of the world, they are even not, treated as human. So I think that that's my responsibility to move forward. So, by having this feeling, taking all responsibility, I'm moving forward. But while you are doing these things, you may see some progress. More people shared your visions, and you have more allies, and you have more supporters, you have more encouragement. Even though you may not see, even though difficult to achieve the mission, freedom, and promote human rights, but what I believe is it starts from the individual. If we change individual, and since I'm seeing more and more supporters, individual, young people joining with us, people from the different religion joining with us. So those kind of, things make me more, encouragement. And I think we just need to continue until we get freedom and justice in our country, and until we see a smile of the people in our country, true smile of the people in our country.
And for me, I've worked on Burma for 20 years now. First time I went, I think that tonight actually brings home for me the two sides of human rights that we see in many different ways. We see that it's a long struggle, but we have urgent issues that we have to deal with. That we must work on those issues. We see how 1,000 people being killed, thousands of people are killed, yet it's about the personal struggles. You guys have brought that home to us. And the film did as well. And how I remember this still, that one of the reasons I could work on Burma for 20 years is that there are individuals that can take the horrible wrongs and turn them into thinking about the next generation. That's what you both do and have done for so long. And that's, for me, something I remember over and over again in each of these stories. And it also gives me hope because there's so much of that still going on in the country. Before it was exile and not as visible. Now the timing of these issues, these engagements, these struggles are inside the country. They're urgent, they're deeply troubling, but those same things that once were in exile are now inside the country. And so please join me in thanking Weiwei and for the